Get out of here. You don't look like someone meant for first class, and I won't let you sneak onto the plane. So, either leave right now, or I'll have someone escort you out in front of everyone." That sharp remark echoed through Gate C-12 at Port Vale Ridgeview International Airport as dozens of heads turned toward the commotion. Those words didn't come from an angry passenger or a stranger on the street, but from Nia Miller, the lead flight attendant on Horizon Air Flight 392. Her voice cut through the quiet hum of the boarding area like a knife, each syllable carrying the cold precision of someone who believed they had the right to humiliate. But what Nia Miller didn't know, and no one at the gate realized at that moment, was that the woman she was insulting was Nia Jackson, CEO of Horizon Air and owner of 40% of the company. In just 12 minutes, Nia Miller would lose her job, the flight crew would halt the flight, and the airline's future would start to change. It all stemmed from this careless moment of judgment. Before we dive deeper into the story, I'd like to know where you're watching from. Share your city or state in the comments. And if you believe no one should be treated this way based on their appearance, subscribe to the channel and like this video. It helps more than you think. Stories like this need to be heard. Now, let's board Flight 392 together, where appearances are judged, voices are raised, and justice is served in every seat. Right at 6 o'clock, Nia stepped lightly into the first-class boarding line, wearing a simple navy blue t-shirt, no brand jeans, and white sneakers. Nothing flashy, nothing corporate. Her only accessory was a small leather bag over her shoulder and the quiet confidence of someone who built an $8 billion aviation empire from nothing. But today, she wasn't here as the CEO. She had come incognito after weeks of receiving anonymous complaints from passengers of color, reporting frequent denials, disrespect, or suspicion on Horizon Air flights. These reports shocked her. Much of it mirrored what she had experienced earlier in her own life. So, without cameras, assistants, or a company entourage, she decided to see it for herself. She had boarded dozens of flights before, welcomed with smiles and champagne in first-class lounges around the world. But now, as she presented her valid boarding pass to Nia Miller, she saw that familiar glint in the woman's eyes, a doubt that someone like her could be sitting in seat 1A. Nia Miller didn't even glance at the ticket. "Ma'am, this lane is for first class," she said firmly, as if Nia had made a mistake. Nia nodded calmly. "I know." She held out the pass again. Nia Miller took it with 2 fingers, as if it were dirty. She stared at it for a second before scoffing, "This is definitely fake." Before Nia could respond, Nia Miller turned and called out loudly, "Mark, can you verify this?" "I think we have a problem here." Mark Brennan, another flight attendant standing just outside the entrance, stepped forward and smiled. He leaned into the handheld intercom and announced, "Gate control. We have a suspicious boarding pass here. Can you check on that?" The word suspicious hung in the air like smoke. Passengers waiting nearby started turning their heads and whispering. At that moment, Liam Park, a Korean-American travel vlogger sitting near the front of the boarding area, quietly pulled out his phone and hit record. His friend, Emma Collins, a freelance writer traveling with him, whispered, "Are you seeing this?" Liam nodded seriously. "She hasn't done anything wrong." Back at the gate, Nia's eyes narrowed, her voice steady. "That boarding pass is mine. I want it back." Nia Miller didn't respond, Instead, Chloe Lynn, a young flight attendant who had just joined the team, stepped up, snatched the pass from Mia Miller's hand, and said with a smirk, "No way someone dressed like this paid for first class. Maybe you found this in the trash." With that, she stuffed the ticket into her uniform pocket and turned away. The insult wasn't shouted, but it didn't need to be. Its cruelty was deliberate, sharp as a razor. Javier Morales. The gate agent at C-12 watched with clear discomfort. He had greeted Nia a few minutes earlier and checked her documents himself. He knew everything was in order. Mia Miller. I already confirmed her boarding. She's on the passenger list. Mia Miller waved him off. Then you must have made a mistake. Clearly, she's not who she claims to be. A few rows away, Emma held up her phone and whispered, "This is disgusting. I'm recording too." Nia took a deep breath, holding back the storm building inside her. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. At age 22, she was denied boarding on a business trip because a gate agent assumed her affordable outfit, and darker skin meant she was lost. That moment stayed with her, fueling her drive to attend business school, invest in private equity, and eventually reach the boardroom. And now, 2 decades later, it was happening again. Only this time, the stakes were different. This time, she had the power. "Give me back my boarding pass," Nia said calmly but firmly. Chloe glanced back with a smile. "Why don't you go talk to security?" Mia Miller crossed her arms. "We need you to step aside." "Ma'am, you're holding up the real passengers." Those words hit like a bucket of cold water. Nia looked around. A small crowd had gathered, some whispering, others watching in uneasy silence. Liam stepped closer and raised his phone. "This is wrong," he said loudly. "I don't know who you think she is, but this is harassment." Mia Miller turned to him, annoyed. "Sir, please stop recording." Liam didn't lower his phone. "I'll stop when you start treating people like human beings." Suddenly, Emma stepped toward Chloe and gently touched her uniform pocket. "I can read the ticket from here," she said. "It's clearly seat 1A for Jackson." Some nearby passengers gasped. Javier stepped forward again. "That's the ticket I scanned earlier." Mia Miller's face twisted in frustration. "We're getting to the bottom of this," she snapped. "But until then, she's not boarding," Mark added mockingly. "Maybe she should call whoever she thinks bought her that seat." Nia turned slightly, pulled her phone from her bag, and dialed a number. "Tara," she said softly as the line picked up, "activate the internal system." "I'm at C-12, flight 392. On the other end, Tara Evans, her executive assistant, responded without hesitation. "Done? You just say the word." Nia looked up and met Mia Miller's eyes. "You've made a serious mistake." Chloe didn't hesitate, flashing a bright smile and maintaining the cool confidence Mia Miller had held. She stepped closer to Nia and held up the boarding pass like evidence in a courtroom. "This ticket is fake. I don't know who you're trying to fool, but you're not getting on this flight. Leave now, or we'll have security remove you." "Your scam ends here." Her voice was sharp enough to draw the attention of the entire cabin. Mark Brennan, still standing near the aircraft entrance, fueled it further with a louder tone and gestured towards the exit. "Get out before you delay everyone else." Then, without warning, he reached out and grabbed Nia's arm. "Not hard," but enough to shock the nearby passengers. "We don't have time for this," he growled. "You're not even supposed to be here." Nia didn't flinch. She stood her ground, looked straight into Mark's eyes, and said in a quieter but weighty voice, "Take your hand off me." Chloe shouted, "She's a fraud," louder than necessary, as if trying to drown out the rising discomfort. But finally, Javier Morales, the gate agent, stepped in again. "That's enough," he said evenly. His eyes locked on Mark. "She is on the passenger list. I checked her documents myself." "You're the ones in the wrong here." Mia Miller glared at him sharply enough to shatter glass. "Do you want to lose your job too?" "Javier." She barked loud enough for passengers to hear. "Then keep defending liars." Just a few feet away, Emma Collins was still recording, her hand shaking with anger. "I can't believe this is happening in front of everyone," she said, her voice breaking. "You're humiliating her." Liam, still holding his phone, turned to the surrounding passengers. "You all see what's going on here, right? This isn't about protocol. It's about her appearance." Someone toward the back murmured in agreement. Mia Miller turned to them and tried to regain control. "You're not allowed to record airline staff. That's a violation of FAA policy." But Javier quickly interjected. "That's not true. Not if it's for accountability." And that's when things shifted. Passengers started murmuring louder. Phones began rising. Everyone had seen enough. And then, loud enough to echo in the cabin. A woman in row 2A said, "She's not done anything. Let her sit down." The tension, once a quiet storm, now erupted. But Nia had no intention of backing down. Not anymore. She glanced at her phone again. On the other end, Tara Evans, her executive assistant, had quietly logged every second of the incident into Horizon Air's internal monitoring system. "Tara," Nia said gently, "I want to activate the bias incident protocol." "This is escalating." Tara responded immediately. "In motion. Timestamp recorded. Witness accounts incoming. Just say the word when you're ready to go public." Nia didn't speak. She didn't need to. Not yet. However, Mia Miller only grew bolder. "I've seen people like her try this before," she hissed to Mark, not bothering to lower her voice. "They print fake tickets and act like they belong. Thinking someone like them can just waltz into first class. Not on my flight." The word "them" landed like a slap. Nia heard it. Liam did too. Emma did. Everyone in earshot did. Javier whipped around. "You've crossed the line," he said, his eyes blazing. "That woman has more right to be on this flight than anyone else in this room." Mia Miller ignored him and turned back to Nia. "Show me the ID you used to buy this." "Now," Nia raised an eyebrow. "Do you mean the company ID with my name on it? I'd be happy to. But I suggest you double-check your facts before this gets worse." Mark stepped in again, his voice firm. "Ma'am, if you don't cooperate, we're calling security." Javier stepped between them. "You won't do that. I'm the gate agent, and I'm reporting you from here on out. I have video from 5 minutes ago. I'll send it to Horizon Air myself." "Do you think they'll side with you after this? You're not involved." Emma shook her head. "Now I am. You made it public when you tried to kick her out in front of everyone." Passengers started speaking up. A man in 1B leaned forward and said, "She hasn't even raised her voice. She just showed you a valid ticket, and you're treating her like a criminal." Another added, "This is ridiculous." Nia Miller hesitated for a split second, but then she snapped back into performance mode. "This is my aircraft, and I'm in charge of this cabin, and right now, I'm ordering her removal." Mark moved again, this time faster, but Javier stood firm between them. "Touch her again, and I'll ground this flight myself." Nia offered no more explanation. She just turned back to Tara. "Push it forward." On the other end, Tara's voice was calm but direct. "The incident is escalating. Executives have been notified. Legal is on alert. Just say the word." Nia Miller still didn't understand, but her smug smile began to fade. The energy in the cabin had completely shifted. Chloe looked uncomfortable now, and Mark, who had started this with so much bravado, fell silent. Javier nodded to Nia and said softly, "I'm with you. Whatever this is, it's wrong." And then came the finale. Javier turned to the crowd and added in a trembling voice, "This isn't the first time Nia Miller has done something like this. We've received complaints about discriminatory behavior toward passengers, mishandling tickets, verbal abuse. It's always been buried, but I've remembered, and I've had enough." The silence that followed was absolute. Nia Miller stood frozen, her lips slightly parted. Chloe stepped back. Nia nodded slowly, her voice almost a whisper. "Then let's not bury this anymore." And now, to you, the viewer, what would you say to Nia Miller if you were standing in that cabin? How would your voice sound if it was your mother, your sister, or your friend being humiliated like this? Comment below. Let your words stand where justice is trying to be silenced. "Let her go!" Nia Miller shouted, her voice trembling with anger but not fear. Not yet. She didn't know what was coming. She pointed at Nia as if commanding the universe. She doesn't belong here. "Get her off the plane now." Chloe, always a step behind but eager to prove her loyalty, grabbed the intercom handset next to the galley door and, without checking with supervision, announced to the cabin, "We're experiencing a boarding delay due to an unauthorized individual attempting to enter first class. Please be patient." As soon as the announcement reached the passengers, gasps echoed through most of the rows. Emma stood up immediately. "That's a lie. She's not unauthorized." "She's on the passenger list." Liam swung his phone toward Chloe. "The camera's on you now. You just made a false statement over the cabin system." "That's a recorded lie, and I have the whole thing." For the first time, Nia Miller's expression wavered. For the first time, Nia Miller's expression wavered. Her hands, once so steady and confident, now clenched. "Turn off the camera." But Liam didn't budge. Not until someone ends the racism. Mark lunged forward again, clearly following Nia Miller's lead, and placed his hand on Nia's shoulder. "Time's up. You're leaving." But before he could pull her, Javier stepped between them once more, his voice now steely. "Touch her again, and I'll ground this flight myself." Mark looked stunned. Nia Miller spat. "You'll be unemployed before the engines start." Javier didn't even blink. Better unemployed than complicit. The entire cabin shook, with more phones raised and more eyes on them. This was no longer a misunderstanding. It had become a stage for prejudice, and the audience had chosen a side. Nia remained silent throughout, letting the chaos swirl around her. Her silence wasn't surrender, it was restraint. At age 28, she was pushed out by a ticket agent in Chicago who said, "People like you don't fly first class on festival weekends." That humiliation almost broke her. But it also propelled her to start her first venture. Every slight became fuel. Every moment like this was stored and catalogued. She didn't plan to shout now. She didn't need to. Finally, people from the back of first class waved in solidarity. A young black woman in seat 3C stood up, clutching her boarding pass. "I know how that feels. I've been through this, and I never had the courage to say anything before, but this is wrong." A man in 2D nodded. "This isn't just wrong. It's a pattern." Chloe mumbled something under her breath, but before she could speak, Liam interrupted. "Speak up." "Chloe, let us hear what you're saying." She said nothing. Mia Miller, still clinging to some illusion of control, tried to reclaim the narrative. "This disruption is unacceptable. Horizon Air doesn't tolerate fraud." But Emma cut in, shouting, "Neither do we, and right now, you're the fraud." Finally, Nia looked up. She locked eyes with Mia Miller and said in a calm, cool tone, "You keep saying I don't belong on this airline, but actually, I belong here more than you think." Mia Miller scoffed. "Oh, really? Did you buy a first-class seat? Good for you. But that doesn't mean you can rewrite the policies." Nia didn't break eye contact. "No, but being the CEO means I already have." That didn't land immediately. It hung in the air for a second, as if the cabin paused to let it sink in. Then, Mia Miller blinked. Chloe looked confused. Mark's mouth fell open. "What? Who are you?" Before Nia could answer, Emma stood up and called out, "Everyone, she's the CEO." "She is Horizon Air." That sent a wave through the cabin. Phones buzzed. Voices overlapped. "You're kidding." "No way. Wait, what did she say?" Liam pointed his camera at Nia. "Is it true? Are you really the CEO?" But Nia didn't respond. Not yet. She just turned back and said to Tara, still on the open line, "Let legal know the window is closing." "I'm ready to act." Tara's voice came through clearly. "Understood. We're waiting." Mia Miller heard it. Her face paled, and her hand slipped from her hip. Mark stepped back half a step, suddenly uncertain. "This has gone too far." Javier replied instantly, "The process doesn't include harassing passengers based on what they're wearing or their skin color." Then, without a word, passengers from rows 1 through 3 stood together. They formed a silent barrier between Nia and the crew. The air grew thick. Mia Miller hissed, "What are you doing?" A man in 1B looked her straight in the eye. "Protecting her the way we wish someone had protected us." Chloe's voice choked as she said, "This is getting out of control." Liam responded, "It was never in control." It was denial. Mia Miller turned toward the galley as if seeking support. But there was none. Support. But there was none. The crowd had chosen their side, and they weren't on hers. Emma raised her phone again. You have a few seconds before this becomes the biggest PR disaster your airline has ever seen." Nia still hadn't revealed her identity. She let the passengers speak for her. Let their unity tell the story. Then came the big turn. Javier stepped up, facing Mia Miller directly. "I filed a report on you 3 months ago for doing exactly this to another passenger. You claimed their ID was fake. Management buried it. But I remember. And now, so does everyone." Mia Miller opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her face flushed. Chloe slowly pulled the boarding pass from her pocket and handed it over without a word. Now, for those of you watching at home, what would you do in that moment if a loved one was being humiliated in public like this? Would you stay silent or stand up? Let us know in the comments, because silence protects the guilty. And stories like this only get told if people like you refuse to look away. Mark moved again, this time more aggressively. "We've given you every chance," he growled, stepping toward Nia with open arms. "You're leaving this plane right now." He wasn't asking. He wasn't waiting. He reached for her arm as if he had the authority to escort her somewhere she didn't belong. But the cabin had changed. Everything had changed. Before he could touch her again, a wall of people stepped forward. Row 1, then row 2, then row 3. Liam, Emma, the woman in 3C, the man in 1B, even the elderly couple in 2A and 2B, who hadn't said a word until now, stood up. "Back off," one of them shouted. "You're not laying a hand on her." The human barrier tightened, and Mark was stuck. "Move," he barked at the passengers, but no one budged. "I said, move." Yet, they stood shoulder to shoulder, arms crossed, unmoving. Mia Miller's voice rang out in panic. "This is a federal offense, interfering with the crew." But her tone had changed. It was no longer authority, it was desperation. Chloe stood still, clutching the boarding pass like some kind of shield. Javier raised his hand, stepping between them once more. "You've taken this too far. You've tried to remove a verified first-class passenger. You've announced over the intercom calling her an intruder. You've insulted her, grabbed her, and now you're ordering her off the plane while passengers are recording and filing complaints in real time." "Stop," Mia Miller said. But Mark was the first to break. His shoulders slumped. "This isn't what I signed up for," he mumbled. "I just thought she was lying." He looked around at the passengers who had stood up for the woman he tried to push out. He glanced at Chloe, who was now biting her lip, her hand trembling slightly. And finally, at Mia Miller. But she wasn't looking at anyone. She was staring straight ahead, eyes unfocused, like someone who just realized they were in a different story than they thought. Nia said nothing. She hadn't moved since the standoff began. Her breathing was steady. Her hands were relaxed. Her silence spoke louder than any shout from the phones in her palm. Tara Evans was still connected, her voice gentle but ready. "Nia," she said softly. "Sarah Mitchell is on the line. She's been briefed." Sarah, a longtime board member and ally for reforms. One of the few at the top who always pushed for change. "She's waiting for you." Nia nodded once. "Patch her in." Nia's eyes met hers. Sarah's voice came through the speaker. "Nia, you give the order, and this crew will be permanently grounded." Mia Miller stepped forward, her voice finally cracking. "Who are you talking to? What are you doing?" But Nia didn't answer her. "What are you doing?" But Nia didn't answer her. She never looked at Mia Miller again. Her eyes stayed on the passengers, the ones who had stood up, the ones who had formed a line between her and the injustice. "Sarah," Nia said clearly, "I want to initiate termination proceedings for Mia Miller immediately. I want Mark Brennan banned from flying pending review. Chloe Lynn as well. Effective now." There was a pause on the other end. Then Sarah said, "Understood. Consider it done." Mia Miller jerked as if the words had struck her. "Wait, what are you saying? You can't do that." But Nia spoke up, not loud, but firm enough to silence the cabin. "I want to say that I am Nia Jackson, CEO of Horizon Air, and I have just terminated 3 employees for violating the very policies they swore to uphold. You treated a valid passenger like a criminal. You refused to let me board, tried to humiliate me in public, and incited chaos on this aircraft. And now, it's over." A silence enveloped the cabin. Someone dropped a pen. Another whispered, "Oh my goodness." And then Chloe, who had stood behind Mia Miller the whole time, let the boarding pass fall to the floor. It landed near Nia's feet. Chloe didn't bend to pick it up. She just stared at it. Then, without a word, she turned and slowly walked toward the galley, eyes downcast. Mark didn't move. Mia Miller stood rigid in the aisle, now clearly shaking. "Do you think this ends here? You'll face backlash. You'll be counterattacked." Nia tilted her head. "Maybe, but today, you're not flying." "I am." And with that, she stepped over the ticket that had once been taken from her, paused at seat 1A, and placed her bag on the chair. The seat that was always hers, the one they tried to deny. "We're fully supporting you. Do what needs to be done." Finally, Mia Miller found her voice. "You're ruining everything." All of this. For what? Nia turned slowly to face her, eyes steady. "No, you ruined it. The moment you opened your mouth and decided I didn't belong based on my appearance, you ended your own career. All I did was finally stop pretending that I had to tolerate it." Passengers slowly returned to their seats, whispering, recording, some still in shock, some applauding quietly. Javier approached Nia. "I've worked this gate for 3 years, and I've never seen anything like that." Nia smiled faintly. "You stood up when it mattered." "That means something." He bowed his head, touched. "Thank you." Mark shuffled toward the jetway, dazed, now escorted by another gate agent. Chloe stayed in the galley, out of sight. Mia Miller, still stiff in the aisle, now clearly trembling. "Do you think this is over?" "You'll get pushback." Nia inclined her head. "Possibly, but today, you're grounded. I am flying." And with that, she stepped over the stolen ticket, paused at seat 1A, and placed her bag on the chair. The seat that was always hers, the one they tried to deny. And just before sitting, Nia turned to the cabin and said to everyone, not loudly, but with the calm of someone reclaiming their space, "To those who spoke up, thank you. You didn't know who I was. You didn't need to. You just knew something was wrong, and you acted. That's what changes everything." Then, she sat down, buckled her seatbelt across her lap, and leaned back as if nothing had happened. Though everything had, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy. It pressed on everyone in the cabin like the changing cabin pressure during a flight. Seat 1A. No one moved. The passengers, once buzzing with whispers and phone recordings, now stood still, staring. In the seconds after Nia settled into seat 1A, no one moved. The passengers, once buzzing with whispers and phone recordings, now stood still, staring, not in disbelief, but in realization. A storm had passed through the aircraft, but it hadn't just blown through. It had rearranged the entire sky. Mia Miller remained standing a few rows away, frozen in place. Her expression was a twisted mix of disbelief and fury. Her arms, once crossed in command, now hung limp at her sides. Mark had disappeared down the jetway without a word, eyes hollow. Chloe lingered in the galley, out of sight. Her posture slumped, her energy collapsed inward. It was over, but not really over, because Nia Jackson hadn't just claimed her seat. She was about to reclaim the airline's conscience. Nia pulled out her phone again and tapped once. "Tara," she said quietly. "Patch Sarah back in. Put her on speaker." Within seconds, a soft connection tone sounded, followed by Sarah Mitchell's calm voice. "I'm listening." Nia stood up, not because she had to, but because she wanted to face the cabin, look straight at those who had risen when the crew hadn't. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nia Jackson. I am the CEO of Horizon Air, and I own 40% of this company. I boarded this flight incognito to investigate recent complaints about mistreatment and bias. What you just witnessed, what you just participated in, is why I was here. Not because I expected it, but because I've experienced it before." A collective gasp spread through the rows. Some passengers leaned forward. Others pulled out their phones, but no one interrupted. "Mia Miller," Nia said, but the sentence stopped there. "Continue. As of this moment, she has been terminated from Horizon Air. Her behavior, words, and utter disregard for basic human dignity and decorum have made her unfit to work for this company. Her authority in this cabin is revoked. Mark Brennan and Chloe Lynn will be indefinitely banned from flying pending a full ethics review. Chloe will also be permanently barred from working at Horizon." That last line broke Chloe. From the galley came a small sound, half sob, half breath, then a whisper. "I didn't mean it. I thought I was doing what I was told." Nia glanced toward her. She wasn't just following. She volunteered. Javier, standing nearby, blinked rapidly. The weight of what had just happened began to sink in for him. "What does this mean?" he asked gently. Nia nodded. "Yes, you fought for what was right, even when it meant standing alone. I recommend you for an immediate promotion. This takes effect today." A light round of applause from the passengers rose, not for the drama, but for the relief. Someone did the right thing, and finally, it meant something. Sarah's voice came through the speaker. "All actions are documented. We're preparing a press statement. Legal is drafting the language. You have our full support." Mia Miller still hadn't spoken. She stood there like a discarded statue, abandoned by the authority she had wielded as a weapon. Her voice finally emerged in the silence. Do you think this makes you better than us? Nia tilted her head, eyes calm. No, I think it proves I've never been beneath you. Emma stepped forward from her seat, phone down, hand shaking from the adrenaline. I've never seen anything like this, and I've flown everywhere, but this feels personal. Thank you for doing what most CEOs never do. Show up? Liam joined her, his voice still tense from the confrontation. I'll delete the footage if you want. But if this happens again, if someone needs evidence, it's here. Nia nodded. Keep it. I don't need the publicity. But I need people to remember what silence allows. Just as she was about to sit, a voice called from the back. Wait, I need to say something. Even Mia Miller jumped. Even Mia Miller jumped. You don't have to, Nia said. You're no longer obligated. I'm doing this as a human being. He stepped slowly forward, voice hoarse, eyes not on Nia, but on the passengers. This isn't the first time. Mia Miller, she's done this for years. She always justifies it. She always justifies it. She says she can spot liars, frauds, people trying to sneak in ahead, but it's always the same type, the same passengers, the same assumptions. He swallowed, and I let it happen. I laughed along. I looked away, but today was too much, and I snapped. Mia Miller's voice turned sharp and low. You're a coward. Today, I told the truth. That confession hurt more than anything. Not just Mia Miller. Not just Chloe. Not just Chloe. It's systemic, hidden in routines, whispered in scripts, embedded in training manuals no one ever rewrites. Nia exhaled slowly, then lifted her phone. Tara, add a full audit to the reform plan. I want every passenger complaint from the last 5 years reopened, and I want Mark's statement added to the report. Tara's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. Noted. The entire airline is watching. Nia. And for the first time, they're afraid for the right reasons. The passengers remained still, witnessing the moment that had shifted from humiliation to justice. From doubt to structural change, Nia looked around the cabin and said, This isn't about me. It's never been about me. It's about every time someone is questioned, interrogated, or excluded because of how they look, and we call it a misunderstanding. But today, there was an answer, and that matters. She sat down again. This time, no one turned away. The transition from confrontation to transformation wasn't obvious. It was methodical. The current quiet was charged. Nia sat in seat 1A, not because she was tired, but because she needed the quiet to compose herself. Her phone was still on, directly linked to Tara Evans and Sarah Mitchell, who were now coordinating internal processes in real time. Tara, she said calmly, begin phase 1. I want the full suspension notice sent to all 3 crew members before this plane leaves the gate. Confirm system lockout and redirect this crew out of rotation entirely. Tara's voice responded immediately. Done. Access revoked. Their logins are locked. Flight schedules updated. Legal clearance obtained. Sarah had just given the green light for the public reform process to begin. Nia nodded and turned her eyes to the passengers who had supported her. Folks, I know this flight didn't start as expected, but I assure you, today, it will end differently for this airline. Your voices drove real-time accountability for you. Change starts now. A light round of applause rippled through the rows, not for the spectacle, but for justice. Javier, still standing by the galley wall, looked visibly moved. "What does real reform look like?" he asked. Nia smiled gently. "It means no more buried complaints, no more silent reviews. Every instance of bias in this company will be reopened, every training program will be rewritten, and every crew member will be retrained. From this point on, discrimination isn't just against policy. It's a career-ending offense." Javier nodded, his face lighting up with cautious hope. Behind him, Chloe stands still, her back against the wall, her eyes red and teary, but she doesn't say a word. But then, a voice that Nia never expected echoes from the back of first class. "Do you think this company is clean? Do you think everything will end here?" Mia Miller's voice is hoarse, almost rough. Nia slowly turns to look at her. Mia's face no longer shows any arrogance. It's angry, backed into a corner. "You want the truth," she says, staring straight at Nia. "We were advised not to mess with certain types of passengers. We were told to keep an eye on who, not just by policy, but by management too. I didn't create this culture. I've just been living in it." For a moment, the whole cabin goes quiet. And then, Nia says softly, "Say that again." Mia Miller's voice chokes up. "The regional leaders gave us a secret list of people to watch, rules on how to describe them, and even dress codes to flag. It's all implied like that. They never write it down, but everyone gets it. That bias isn't just random. It's built into the system, deeply rooted in the unwritten company culture." Nia's jaw clenches. "Do you all have names?" she asks. Mia Miller nods slowly. "Yes, it's all by region. You'll find them in your HR logs if you know where to look. I'll cross-check her complaints with the marked reports and complaint patterns. If there's a pattern, we'll spot it." Sarah jumps in. "If this comes out, it won't just mean ending contracts. This will trigger a federal compliance review. I'll alert the legal department." Nia looks around at the passengers, her tone still calm but firm. This is why we can't ignore moments like this, because when you peel back the surface, you don't just find one person's prejudice, you find a whole system protecting it. A woman near the front, who hasn't said a word yet, quietly raises her hand. "I got pulled aside on a Horizon flight last year. They said my ID didn't match, but I never reported it. I figured no one would believe me." Nia looks at her with such a warm gaze. "They will now." Behind her, Javier steps forward. "If there's anything I can do to help, even beyond this flight, just say the word." Nia turns to him, her voice gentle. "You've already done it, and that's why I want you on the team reviewing these complaints." He blinks. "For real?" She says, "I need folks who don't just know the rules. I need folks who remember what it feels like when those rules get broken." Up front in the plane, a second gate agent quietly escorts Mia Miller toward the jet bridge. She doesn't fight it. She doesn't say another word. And this time, no one watches her go. Instead, they all turn to Nia, who's still seated, one hand holding her phone, the other pressing lightly on her heart. The cabin has shifted from conflict to clarity. The reforms have begun. Not in a press release, not in a boardroom, but right here, seat by seat, witness by witness. 3 months later, the echoes from Flight 392 still linger. It spread far. Mia Miller, Mark, and Chloe have all been officially let go after an internal review. Mia Miller is permanently banned from working in commercial aviation due to multiple passenger complaints from previous flights. Federal regulators have launched a discreet investigation into Horizon's regional operations. After some persuasion, Mia Miller reluctantly agreed. The 3 names she mentioned were quietly removed from their posts. Once logs and internal communications confirmed they had fostered a targeted monitoring culture toward passengers who didn't fit the look. Nia Jackson didn't get back to flying right away after that day. She spent the whole summer meeting with the crew, reviewing outdated training materials, and rebuilding the airline's image from the inside out. But she didn't do it for the spotlight. Not at all. The story of what happened on Flight 392 never hit social media during the flight. Emma and Liam kept their word, and though the footage is saved, it was never posted. What followed was even stronger: an internal overhaul, a cultural reset, and a fundamental change across Horizon's entire staff network. A hotline for reporting bias behavior was set up. And at the heart of it all, steering the new policies with the same calm she showed in Seat 1A, is Nia Jackson. She's received over 200 letters in the following weeks, mostly from strangers who never flew with Horizon, but have seen the quiet changes ripple through the industry. A pilot from another airline wrote, "I don't know what happened on that plane, but whatever you did, it changed our training overnight." A flight attendant in Texas wrote, "Thanks to you, we don't fear speaking up anymore when someone crosses the line." But it's the handwritten letter from a passenger on Flight 392 that's framed on Nia's office wall. It's written in neat cursive. "You didn't just speak up. You raised the bar. You made dignity possible again." Her name is Deborah, and in the letter, she describes how she never stood up for herself against that bias before that moment. But seeing others stand up for Nia gave her the courage she didn't know she had. Surprisingly, Chloe Lynn wrote too. Her letter had no return address. It's short, just 2 paragraphs. In it, she apologizes not only to Nia, but to all the passengers she didn't respect in her career. She wrote, "I didn't realize how much I'd absorbed until that day. You exposed it for everyone. I'll never forget the silence after you said you'd volunteer. It haunts me in the way it should." She ends with, "Thank you for not destroying me. Instead, you showed me who I am, and that's what I needed more than punishment." And now, as Nia stands once more at Gate C12 in Port Vale Ridgeview, this time in a sharp navy coat, walking openly under her own name, she doesn't feel bitter. She feels determined. Javier is there now, wearing a black Horizon badge that says Employee for Fairness and Passenger Experience. They share a smile, no words needed. As passengers board the new flight, they're handed special cards reminding them of Horizon's new passenger rights policy. Each card was personally approved by Nia. In the corner of each card are 3 words: "Dignity in flight here." But not everything ends quietly. The final twist comes in the form of a second audit. An audit requested by Horizon's Independent Ethics Board just weeks after the Flight 392 incident. That audit found that over 30 passenger complaints in the past 4 years were deliberately mishandled or ignored by a specific manager linked to the former base of Diane. It wasn't an accident. It was a cover-up. That manager, who's been promoted for years, was removed from the company once the findings were verified. Nia never expected that her 12 minutes in the cabin would crack the deepest fractures in the company. But she wasn't surprised because bias is never small. It spreads, and when it's not named, it rots everything it touches. Before boarding her new flight, Nia glances back at the cabin one last time for a second. Seat 1A is empty, waiting not just for her, but for whoever comes next. For passengers, anyone who might still doubt, question, or underestimate, but not anymore, not without consequences. And now, for those watching, if you've ever stayed silent in moments of bias, let this be the time you change that. Share your thoughts below. Speak up for those who can't. And if this story moves you, subscribe to this channel and share it with folks who need a reminder that silence isn't strength. Justice is strength.